DieStats lab is actually not due today. It's actually not due right now. You have until tomorrow, end of the day tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. tomorrow to turn that in. There is some confusion going on with the lab. So I guess maybe first things first, I'll take questions about that. If you guys have any more questions about how to do it, I can walk you guys more through about what's expected. I'm glad to see, though, that people weren't confused about the how to do the standard deviation. That's good to know, but people were able to figure that part out. But I guess it was more people just didn't understand how the assignment was worded. So if you guys have any questions about it, go ahead and ask now, and we'll hopefully get those answered. Or was everybody's questions kind of answered in Discord the other night? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, just making sure, because no one's saying anything in the chat. How to declare an array and make it store some data. Okay. Why would we need 6 arrays? The 6 arrays, you have 6 different dice types, right? The data that you, so I guess Mario, how would you think it would be better implemented, I guess? What did you have in mind? If you think 6 arrays is not the way to go, what were you thinking? Because there are other ways to do this. There was a student who did this with a 2D array, and you could do that. But because this is a single dimensional array assignment, I'm having you do it in 6 different arrays. So that one array is gonna hold your data for the D4, one array is gonna hold your data for the D6, the other array is gonna hold your data for the D8, and so on. There's 6 different kinds of dice types. So each array is gonna hold the data you get from each dice type. Yeah, using a 2D array is fine. The requirement is not so much that you absolutely need 6 different arrays, but your 10,000, your number of roles that you're gonna have needs to be a constant that you use in your assignment. It needs to be the global final variable. And the reason I've told you guys a couple of times the reason for it, but that's because we want to make sure, what are the 3 goals of our code? We went over this last week. What are the 3 goals for code that we write? I'm gonna turn off the green screen, that's really annoying. Who can tell me what the 3 goals for our code should be when we're writing code?
That it works.
Aside from it working, the way we design our code, there's 3 criteria we kind of keep in mind.
Efficient? Like use less code?
Sure. It's kind of a read my mind thing. I'm just trying to see how much people remember. Yeah, readable, Nabil. It should be readable, easy to maintain, and easy to edit, or easy to build upon, which kind of goes hand in hand with being readable. The reason why we have this global variable thing, the global constant, is because that helps us accomplish goal number 3, the making it easy to build on. So let's say somewhere down the line, someone's using this dice simulator code and they realize, you know what, the sample size of 10,000 for each dice is too low. I'm gonna make it 100,000. I'm just gonna add a 0 to it, right? Instead of going through all the places in your code and changing that setting, they could just do it off the beginning. And that's the beauty of a final variable. You know it's never going to get changed. You know it's never going to change. It's going to be a constant that we can always use, etc. But I thought since they have the same number of roles, we could just use one array and then pass it into different methods. Okay, but the problem, I see what you're saying. That is one way to do it. The reason I have you do it the other way, I mean, I guess ultimately you could test it and see which one's faster. With something like 10,000 roles, hell, even like 100,000, you'll be able to see some like kind of pauses in between your, even if it's a very slight pause, some slight pauses in between your outputs because the CPU is processing in the background. You could do that. You could have one array that you first do all the D4 calculations in, and then you clear the array, then you pass it to the D6 to do all those calculations, and then get rid of it. But then that's going to require you. I mean, it is doable. It just means that like you're gonna have one array that's always you're gonna have one method that's always gonna build and return an array of 10,000 elements, which is fine. That way of doing it is fine too, Mario. Yeah, I don't want to limit you guys with thinking like there's one implementation. Like Mario's implementation will work too. I mean, probably works if you get the right results and it's working. That's a working implementation. Beyond there, it's just a matter of being like, okay, what's efficient, what's less efficient, what's kind of like confusing that we can clean up, and that just kind of comes with time and reading other people's code, which is why I like going over code in class here, so you guys can see how other people write code. One thing I might start doing is if I see like examples of code that's really good or really not good, really good and really not good, I'll talk about it on here. I'll pull it up here and just discuss, hey, this is why I think it's not good code. The main problem I'm seeing consistently across the stuff that I've graded so far is some of you guys comment the hell out of your code. I don't need you to tell me with comments in every line what each line of your code does. I should know what each line of your code does because I can read your code, and you should have things named clearly in a way that it makes it obvious what your line of code is doing. So that means stuff like avoiding using too many variables that are named like X or A or B, right? Especially if you're repeatedly using the variable A. It should be really obvious by reading the name what it is. SC is just a thing I came up with, but you could also call it like scanner object or like SC object or scanner object or something like that. Like those are totally acceptable names as well. And in fact, if someone's not used to my convention of using SC for scanner, that might be kind of better for them because they don't have to like keep scrolling back to your declaration. They can just remember, oh, SC is the scanner object or whatever it is because it's in the name. But anyways, today's probably gonna, since there's the extension for dice stats, today will probably be a shorter session. Yeah, so first off, like I said, if you have any questions about the dice stats thing, unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, I'm really just gonna go over what's expected of you guys next week. And that'll probably be that. I don't really have it's not really a demo or anything to do. Oh, well, you have two-dimensional arrays. I'll probably do a little demo for 2D arrays.
I have a question, but it's not actually related to the dice.
Sure, what's up?
Do we have to upload milestone 2?
Milestone 2 is going to be assigned week after next.
Okay, thank you.
Or next week, sorry, I should say. It's going to be assigned next week. And you're going to have 2 weeks to work on that. Any other questions? No? No other questions? Okay. In that case, this is super late, but let's take a screenshot of the attendance list. Okay. Okay. Let's go and get into some code, maybe. Why not? Okay, make a new demo here, and we'll call that multidimensional. Alrighty. Public static void main string arts. Alrighty, so you guys should have been kind of learning a bit about multidimensional arrays in your 210 classes. I think that was last week. What are you guys doing right now? Are you doing review or are you guys going into classes? Review, some of you guys are going to object classes. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, object classes are really fun. We'll get into that next week. That'll be some really cool stuff. What I'm thinking for the lab for the object classes is it'll have something to do with like, does anyone who plays games that is a nerd know what theory crafting means? Has anyone ever heard this term? Anyone here who plays something like World of Warcraft 2 has ever heard of the term theory crafting? Yeah, so theory crafting is basically something extreme nerds in games do, where they do a lot of math and a lot of simulations to test which piece of gear is better than the other. So let's say you're playing like Diablo and you get gloves, these new gloves that give you more of one stat but less of another. And then you have to think to yourself, okay, if I change to these gloves, am I overall going to do more damage or less damage? So you'll be designing kind of a system where you have a character who has one ability and you'll have to program what that ability is. Yeah, exactly, coming up with a usable Path of Exile build. That's another one. So you'll have to design a program where you have one character who has one ability and they have an existing piece of equipment and they have a new piece of equipment, and we'll be building classes for the different stats that each of these will have. It's cold out here. All right. But yeah, that is what you guys are looking at for next week. But anyways, let's go into 2D arrays. So Amal had asked about how we declare arrays. We'll do a really quick review of that. So if I just want to have an array, we initialize it just like how we'd initialize a data type. We say whatever data type we want on there. Let's say we want array of chars. All right, type that into the chats. And then we'll do these blocks, which means it's an array. And the more of these blocks we add, the more dimensions our array has. So like here, for instance, that's a 3-dimensional array. That's a 2-dimensional array. And this is a 1-dimensional array. And inside of it, we'll say char, and we'll give it a name, my 1D array. And we'll just say inside it, we have some chars like A, B, C. Okay. And within this array, these things have called indices. So the way we refer to whatever element in the array is we use the index, right? So and remember, the indices are numbered from what to what. What do we start numbering our indexes with? Yep, 0 to n, exactly. So A is the 0th index, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 6 elements, and they are indexed from 0 to 5. Remember, the max index is always what? How can we always find the max index in an array? Not max, because max is what we're looking for. What is the max index? I'm asking for a general case. Yeah, length minus 1. Length minus 1 is what I'm looking for. This goes for all data structures. Any index data structure, you can always find the max index by just going length minus 1. So that is how you know that. How do we get the third element from my 1D array. How do we do that, guys? Type in the chat. How do we get the third element from my 1D array? Yep, Danny's got it. Caesar's got it as well. My 1D array and 2. Now we'll just say all right, and that is how we do that. Just say print. Okay, now let's go to 2D arrays. And this time I want to have less leeway. Suppose we want to have a 2D array of integers. Suppose we want to make a numbered grid. So first of all, I guess, what are some real life things that a 2D array could model? What are some real life things that we could use this object, this capability in Java to model? Because ultimately, that's kind of what development comes down to, right? Yeah, chess is one. We write code to try and, we take some abstract concept in life and we try to apply it to code. That's how we build things. That's how we can watch. Yeah, multiplication table. There's another one that we could do. I mean, there are many others that we could do, but let's just get one more example. Second letter in the word? Not really. A two-dimensional array is not really. A two-dimensional array is not really going to help us with that. Yeah, tic-tac-toe. That's a good one, Jose. The other one I was going for is like a XY grid. If you think about like a graph, using a 2D array, you could graph stuff technically just by using print statements. It's not going to look great, but that's something that you could do. So let us talk a bit about 2D arrays. So if we've declared a 1D array here, suppose I want to declare an array of, another array of, let's say, int, an array of ints named my 2D array. Okay, so how do I need to change this to declare it, just this part? Yeah, there you go, Nabil, int 2. And if I wanted to make this an empty array of, say, I wanted to make this an empty array of 12 rows by 6 columns, how would I do that? I want to declare an empty array that's 12 rows by 6 columns. How do I do that? Yeah, equals new int, 12 by 6. And those of you who are learning classes and objects, you guys should be starting to see this new keyword. New is a keyword that's used to create a new instance of an object. We'll talk more about instances next week, but I'll review that a little bit next week, what that means. We'll go more in depth, but new is our creator keyword that creates instances of stuff, of things we've modeled. So we're creating a new instance of a blank integer array that has dimensions 12 by 6. How do you format arrays in something like printf? Good question. So let's just think about abstractly. When we're printing out the elements in a list, in an array, what are we doing? And you don't need to think like Java terms, but just think abstractly. What are we doing when we're printing out, when we want to print out arrays? We have an abstract collection of some n elements inside of an array, right? How do we print them out one by one? Yeah, exactly. You just get the array of that index. And it's very much the same way when you're doing in a 2D array, and we'll go over that here in a second. So one of the things to know, and I'm going to make some block comments over here, this array that we have, my 2D array, has anybody ever heard of JSON formatting? Okay, I didn't think you guys would. It's a little more of a. If any of you have ever done web requests, you've probably heard of JSON format. But essentially, so okay, we have an array. What this means, a two-dimensional array, means we have an array of arrays. There is an outer array right here that's going to have 12 elements inside of it. So 1, now I really regret making it 12. Let's just make this 3, okay? I'll just make it 3 by 4, just because I'm lazy. So it has 3 elements. This is the outer array. And it has 3 elements inside of it. And each lone element has 4 elements within it. Right? Because this is an array of arrays. Here is the innermost array, which is this. And then the outermost array has 3 of those arrays. So 1, 2, 3 of those 4-element arrays. And so the JSON thing earlier, a JSON really is just, this is going like really on a tangent, but when you do web requests, let's say when you submit a form, when you're registering for a website, the way the web server takes your data is in what's called a JSON format, which is just an array of arrays. So inside this array, you have like name, your data, age is your data as an integer, etc. It's a key value pair relationship inside of an array of arrays. That's what JSON is. It's pretty neat stuff, but not really relevant to this course. Anyways, it's a 2D array. This is what it looks like inside. So now, let's say we want to populate the 2D array with random ints. Import Java util star. So if I want to fill this with random integers, here's how I would do that. By the way, pop quiz question for you guys. Do each of these arrays need to have exactly 4 elements in them? Could I have, with this declaration, could I have a 2D array that looked like this? Assume the x's are just like integers, right? And like they're all just different integers. Could I have a declaration like this? Or could I have an array like this? How many say yes? One person said no, one person said yes on the board. Yeah, use the participants window board to say yes or no. Oh, you guys are pretty split on this. I actually can have a 2D array like this. Just because each inner array has a capacity of 4 doesn't mean all 4 will get used. Right? Just like how if we had a regular array, let's say I made a int my array, right? And it was new array, new int 4. I could have less than 4 elements in here. I could have like inside it could be like 1, 4, 1, 5, 2, right? This is totally legal. This is totally okay. Likewise, with 2D arrays, we can have that. So that is something to keep in mind. So let's, you could not have more than 4, that is correct. This is the limit, not a requirement. Right, the dimensions are limits, they're not requirements. Now, that being said, normally in a program like, in a coding language like Java, it's bad practice to, and it's bad practice in general, to declare more space than you need. I shouldn't say bad practice, it's inefficient. Even if it's inefficient by just a little bit, imagine if you were coding for a microcomputer, right, where you have very, very limited memory. Every byte counts in that kind of situation. So declaring a bunch of space that you don't use is a waste of memory. So let's get back to this. I want to create random integers to fill into this. So one way, the easiest way I could do is just do a for loop to parse through each space in this array and populate that. So how many dimensions are in my array right now? In my 2D array, how many dimensions do we have? This is a really easy question, and we're not proceeding until people answer. So yeah, 2, exactly. So how many levels of for loops do you guys think I need to do this? Because we can't just do it in one for loop, right? Or I'll actually show you why we can't do it in one for loop. I'm gonna write just a quick method here called public void static void. We can even just say static because everything's in one class right now. Static void print array int array for int I equals 0. This then array dot length plus plus. I'll say for int j equals 0, j is less than array 0 dot length. And I'll go over the notation here in just a second. We're going to finish this part first, and then I'll go over here. Another thing to keep in mind, and actually we'll do this interesting up here. So if we say array Daniel chain, Leo Segura, Superlets. Daniel and Leo, were you guys already in and just like rejoining, or are you just late? Okay, Nabil, I'll go over that notation here in just a second. I want to do a very quick demo first. So if we have my array 0 is equal to 2, 3, okay? And then system at println my array dot length. I got this thing. Configurations. Multi-dimensional array demo. Okay, so if I run this right now, we might think that this might print out 2, right? Because we only have 2 elements, but let's see what it prints out. It prints out 4. My array.length gives you how long the array is, not how many elements there are within it. That's something really important to keep in mind. This will not return to you how many elements are in the array, just how many elements the array can take. Like what is the max length of it, not what is its current length. Those are important distinctions to make. Anyways, on we go. And for each one, we're just going to print out system at print. I'm going to say array I, j, and a space after, and then we're going to print out a new line at the end of each iteration. So I'll go over this loop here in just a second. Actually, I probably could have. It's going to be the same loop in both instances, so we'll talk about it a little bit here. So the reason Okay. The reason why we do my 2D array 0.length is because each array, each inner array in this multidimensional array is going to have the same length. We always know there's always going to be at least a 0th index. So we'll just say, okay, from this outer array, what this line says is, in my 2D array, I have this. Grab the 0th index array, and I'll actually put indices here so we can see. Grab this 0th index array, and I want to know what the length of that inner array is. Because remember, a multidimensional array is just an array of arrays, or depending on how many levels you have. But that's what a multidimensional array is. It's just a collection of arrays. Like if I had my 3D array, let's say I have that here. Suppose I did. So here's the outer, and then within each, let's say it's actually I'll just create one. Int 3, my 3D array is equal to new int 3, 4, 5. We'll just say, okay. So it has 3 outer arrays, and then within each outer array, there's 4 more arrays. All right. It has 4 elements. 3, 4, and within each element there are 5. Within each array that's within it, there's 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll just copy that 2, 3, 4 times. Right. So within the outermost index, there's 0, and just 0, 1, 2, and then inside of it, there is 0 through 4, because those are 5 arrays over here. So if we just say this is A, this is B, this is C. Ugh. Then in that case, this is A, this is B, and then this is C inside of it, if that makes sense. Do you guys get that? Or it might make more sense here if let me go to the whiteboard real quick. So again, we have a declaration of a 3D array, and then it's going to have 3 dimensions. Let's say it's, I'll just go 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, if we look at how that's going to look, inside of the array, we're going to have 2 arrays here. These are arrays. And then inside of each one, we're going to have 3 subarrays. Three. And then within each of those subarrays, there are 4 elements. Yeah, the rows are 4 and the columns are 6. It always goes row, column for a 2D array, and then for 3D array, etc. That's usually, that goes to how we model conventional things in Java. Really, from a Java perspective, all a multidimensional array means is it's an array contained within another array, right? Does that concept make sense? Because that one is that's what's going to allow you to be able to understand what the multidimensional arrays are and how you can use that to model things. It's more important, I think, that you learn what the thing is, and then you can understand how to model things after using it. Whereas if I just tell you, oh, this is how we model this thing in Java, like that example is useful to have, but does the semantic make sense to you guys? I'm having a hard time explaining it, but yeah, it is an important semantic distinction to make, because if you understand what the actual thing is, then you'll be able to come up with implementations for it on your own. But if I just tell you what the implementations are, and you just keep doing it, all you know is how to do those couple things, right? What happens in the future if you come across a different problem and you're struggling of how to solve it, and you're just missing the solution because you're not thinking of using a 3D array to implement. So that's where I'm coming from with that. So hopefully this visual graphic helps. Is this helping? I mean, are you guys seeing what I mean when I say it's a array within arrays? Right, we got our 3 separate arrays. And then within each array, there are 4 elements. And that's how these things, that's how all these things over here tie into this. Cool. Okay, so let's go back to the code. And I guess I can delete this block comment. This was really just for illustration purposes. Okay. So now we want to populate it. So what's happening in this array is it's going in the my2D array, the outermost one is going through each of these outermost arrays. So it's going to go through these 3 outermost arrays. Then we want to know how long each of those inner arrays are. In this case, each inner array is length of 3. So we just grab a random outer array, and the easiest one to grab is the first one, the 0th index. That's why we say array 0.length and that. How would I get, so with my 3D array, how would I print out the length of, how would I get this 5 over here? Can anyone give me an idea of how I might get that? Given that we use this for the 2D array, how would I get the length of the innermost array from the 3D array? What would that look like, you guys think? Print out the length of the innermost 3D array. Go ahead and type it in the chat what you guys think. I want to print out, so in this example over here, this length is going to give us 4. How would I get the 5? Be a little more explicit, Ronnie. First of all, it's a 3D array too, by the way. So we want to get the innermost length of the 3D array. How would I get that? What do I need to write to print out the length of this array within this multi-dimensional array? Cameron, you're really close. Ronnie, you're on the right track. I'm asking for like the actual code. Like, look at this over here. How can I modify that to print out this? You guys are very, very close. Yes, Aaron's got it. This is my print, my 3D array, 0. So we grab the first outermost array, then we grab the first inner array, and then we want the length of that innermost array that we grabbed. And that should give us 5. So if we run this real quick, this should print out 5. Yep. Perfect. Everybody got that? Everybody following? Anyone want to review maybe like a detailed breakdown? If you're not getting it, if you're confused, let me know. We will break it down. Because arrays get used for a lot of things. And even though you might stop using arrays in the future and use different Java library data structures, they are all based off of arrays. And arrays are going to come back to bite you because once you get to programming in C, there are no data structures libraries that you can use really. At least, your teacher won't let you use them. You'll have to use arrays to get everything. What is the 3D array for? It's just to demonstrate it, that we can have any dimensional array. So I kind of feel like I say this every week, but these things I'm teaching you, they're not for any specific one thing. These are just tools that you have, right? Trying to think of a good analogy. I'm bad with tools, but you know, I'm just telling you what's in your toolbox and what they do. It's up to you when you're developing stuff to know that, okay, I have these tools and I'm trying to build this. So what tools do I want to use to build this, right? That's kind of the skills we're trying to teach you guys here in 211. We just want you to know what's in your toolbox, what the toolbox things do, and then from here on out, it just becomes a practice of using these tools and understanding how you can use these tools to solve different problems or to build different things. So for the three-dimensional array, you could use it to, let's say you wanted to write a program that would create 3D shapes, or like would draw 3D shapes on a 2D plane. You could use that. Professor Bierman, I don't know if he still teaches 210, but he had a assignment where he would make you print out something like this. So you'd have to print out, like, let's say he gave you dimensions for like a cube, or like, yeah, your program would take dimensions for a cube, and it would have to draw that cube like something like this. You have to draw a three-dimensional shape on a two-dimensional surface. And this looks awful compared to like what you guys would have to do, but you know, you'd use these simple shapes to create the shape that the user wanted you to make. You guys get the idea. So you might use a 3D array here to store, you know, the elements in whatever direction, or to at least store the dimensions of the shape, and then use that to, like you might have it could be like int 1, 2, 3, my 3D shape, new int, and you would just have a length of 1 for each, because you only have one length, one width, one height, right? But you could easily use a 3D array to refer to each thing. So you would always know that, let's say this is always the length, this is always the width, this is always the height, because that's a logic set for your program that you build for your program. So that's one use of a 3D array. Again, it's more important to know what a multidimensional array does and then see how you can apply that to different problems. Most problems that you encounter will just use 1 or 2 dimensional arrays. More specific problems might use more multidimensional arrays. Another reason to use multidimensional arrays might be for different algorithmic solutions, but I'm not smart enough to talk about that stuff. For my algorithmic solutions, I just use Google. And I let someone smarter than me who's already figured it out tell me how to do it. So, and then after we populate our array, we want to print out our 3D array. And if we do that here, or my 2D array, excuse me. And if we print it out here, Cameron, I think it was either you or Aaron asking how we formats a multidimensional array. This is how you do it. This is the basic premise. You print out each element in a column, and then you print out a new row. And that was how you would print a 2D array. Cool. That's really all there is to talk about with multidimensional arrays, honestly. This is how you use them, this is how you declare them, this is how you print them. Beyond here, it's up to you guys to just use the tools and understand how they're used. On that vein, let's talk about what you guys have to do for next week, because I am running low on battery. So we're in lab 8. For next week, you have to do lab 8, and there's a little quiz that you guys have to do. The quiz, you have 3 attempts to do it, and I believe it's the same questions every time. So, you know, I expect most of you guys to get 100 on this. It should be pretty easy. The quiz just has a preview right here, a couple of basic multiple choice questions, and then there's going to be 2 questions where you have to do coding. For these, I just recommend you guys write the code in your IDE of choice, and then just copy paste the code in here. You don't need to, for this one, you only need the loop. You don't need to have like public class, public static void, etc. I just need the loop in here. But for this one, you need to write a whole program. So you will need to have like the public class, public static void main, etc. Yes, question.
How long do we have to finish the quiz, or do we have like unlimited time?
It's not timed. Okie doke. Let's go back to go deeper. So for the chapter 8 lab, you guys are going to be building, when we talked about this in the Discord, you guys are building a tic-tac-toe game. I understand some of you are already doing this for your 210 class, right? You are more than welcome to use, if you've already built it for 210, you built it for 211. I'm not going to revise the assignment that I wrote last night. But you are more than welcome to go for this extra credit. If you've already built a basic tic-tac-toe game, why not try and make it better? You can earn up to 20 points by making game work that will run from the terminal. So you need to use the command line arguments. That is a requirement for this assignment. Does anyone remember how to run Java code from the command line, or how to do it in IntelliJ that can share with the class? There is a demo on iLearn that goes into it. On that same place where the demo is, I go over it in lecture too. So you guys can always check that. But basically, it all comes into this. So if we go to edit configurations, yeah, Java sees the compiler, but Java is to actually run the code. You don't need to compile the code, it just needs to run. If you want to just test it within your IDE, you just say environment variables here, and you can just give it an environment variable and it'll print it out, and it'll add it to the args array. But anyways, let's go back to here. So you need to make a basic tic-tac-toe game, and then for extra credit, come up with an implementation that can have any square dimension board. How do I feel about Connect 4 for this assignment? I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not, Cameron. But if you think about it, Connect 4 is essentially just what do you call it? Tic-tac-toe, but on a 4x4 board. So that is something to consider. Yeah, the extra credit, you're essentially creating tic-tac-toe, but it's on a variable size board. You don't know what size board you have going into the program, so your logic for checking the win condition will change. And that's really all you have to change to earn this 20 points of extra credit. So you guys can earn up to 60 points for this one assignment, which is a lot of fucking points. Any questions? Oh, I gave you a little hint down here. This has been asked for. This has been a Google question, or an interview question for people at Google that has been asked. So I 100% guarantee you'll find implementations online. So if anything, this just becomes an exercise of, do you know how to use Google? And here's a sample output for how it looks. I just made my tic-tac-toe game. One thing to note for my tic-tac-toe, I don't know how you guys did it in yours. You have to use multi-dimensional arrays. I know someone mentioned for Dr. Yoon's class, you guys did a one-dimensional tic-tac-toe board. You have to use a two-dimensional board for this one. I will take off points if it's not two-dimensional array. And one thing you'll notice here, I asked the user to give me to pick a square 1 through 9. I don't have these hard-coded mapped to being like, oh, 1 goes to 0, 0, 2 goes to 0, 1, etc. I use some basic integer math to find these. I'm not going to tell you how I did it, but I'm going to leave that for you guys to figure out. You don't have to do it this way. It's up to you. But if you do it this way, I will take off points if it's hard-coded. Not a lot. I'll just take off a couple points because I think you could have done better. But other than that, any questions about this assignment? So if you want the extra credit, it's just if they get 3 in a row, No, it for the extra credit one, to win it at a multi-dimensional, like if you had a 6x6 board of tic-tac-toe, you still need like a whole entire row or a whole entire column or a whole entire diagonal. So that's the logic for the win. That's what makes it a challenge. Any other questions? If there's no more questions, then that'll be it. Best of luck, guys.
Thanks.
Can you re-explain the assignment of the boxes from left to right, top to bottom? Oh, yeah. So let me go into my, let's go back to sharing. So what I did here, this is a two-dimensional array. It's a 3x3 array. And what I did was I numbered all the boxes. Yeah, the boxes are different from their indices, and I did integer math to get them. I will give you one hint. I used the modulo operator. I use the division and the modulo operator. And using those, you can find the index for the row and the column just from this number 1 through 9. But yeah, it's gonna do some testing. I highly encourage you guys to like draw this board 1 through 9, and then on the side of it, draw like the coordinates and just see what the relationship between those numbers are, knowing how integer math works. Okay, any other questions? No, you don't necessarily have to. You can just ask the user for the coordinates. I'm just saying, if you hard code one square to another square, then I will take points off, because I think at this point you guys should be a little bit beyond that, or I want to push you guys away from that. It's almost always better to come up with a dynamic implementation than a hard-coded one. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You have to use the hard-coded one, and those are the ones like that are really basic that make sense, but generally speaking, it's good to learn how to do these more dynamic solutions. All right, if there's no more questions, that is going to be it for today. Good luck, everybody.